pleasure to welcome back to the show the editor, baseball editor at Sportsnet.ca, Ben Nicholson-Smith, BNS. How are you, sir?
Good. How's it going with you guys?
Pretty good. We're slowly trying to wrap our head around, what is it now, 3 weeks before the pitchers and catchers return to action? Is it 3 weeks or 2 weeks? Where are we at?
Basically 2 weeks and a bit. I mean, it's the 15th of February that they're going to report. So, I mean, that's almost no time.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, is it? You always, think, oh, my God, specifically the last couple of years we've had, how much longer until the season starts. And you don't really realize it, that really in probably the next month to month and a half, you're going to start getting some exhibition games, and you're going to start getting a glimpse of what this team looks like. And I know rumors this weekend that the Toronto Blue Jays interested in a reliever from the White Sox. What do you know about what those rumors entail, and what do you know about that?
Well, it's interesting. This is the time of year that normally those juicy rumors start to peter off a little bit, and everyone gets into spring training mode. So I admit I was a little surprised when I saw the Jays linked to David Robertson of the White Sox as someone that they've talked about with Chicago in the course of the offseason. And, I think that on the surface it makes some sense. This is a team that needs relief help even to this day. I'm not sure exactly how that would have worked out, because he's a player who makes a fair bit of money, and the White Sox certainly have shown a willingness to trade some pretty big pieces this year, including Adam Eaton. But, I would guess it's one of those many possibilities that teams discuss in the course of the offseason. But it's interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, and everybody knows the Toronto Blue Jays need some help in the bullpen. You would have assumed he's a righty. David Robertson's a righty, and is a shutdown righty. He was terrific. He was one of the bright spots in Chicago this year. He's got 2 years left. I think $12 and $13 million on his contract, if I'm not mistaken. So what is it that, because if you watch the White Sox do business over the winter meetings, they fleeced people for their assets. I mean, the return that they got for Adam Eaton was absolutely ridiculous. Chris Sale, same thing. I mean, that's an organization that didn't just rebuild on the fly. They reloaded with some of the best prospects in all of baseball. So knowing that and how well they've done in trying to get rid of some old parts and rebuild, and it's been incredibly impressive, what is it that you think that they would be looking for when it comes to prying someone like David Robertson from their bullpen over to Toronto?
Yeah, it's a great point about the moves they've made so far this winter, and I agree. They've been phenomenal trades. So I would guess that they'd probably be willing to take on some salary to get better prospects back. And if you're dealing a reliever of that caliber at a time that clearly relief pitching is very valued around baseball, when you look at all the contracts that are being signed by the likes of Mark Melancon, Brett Cecil, Aroldis Chapman, I think that they would have been in the right to ask for some pretty big talent, especially if they were taking on most or all of that salary. So, I think that if you're the Jays at that point, maybe you just walk away and say you're going to try to get things done a bit more creatively, because that's the thing with the bullpen. As much as it's tempting to go out and spend on big names, and as much as you have to do that in some areas, and I would say left-handed relief is probably one of them. If you're looking for right-handed relief, well, there are lots of different ways that you can potentially get creative.
Yeah, I love that too. That one word has pretty much summed up the offseason for the Toronto Blue Jays: creative. And so when people use
it was desperate, Dean. That word was desperate.
When people use the word creative, I sort of laugh, but you've watched how teams have been built, and you look at what Cleveland did last. It's just case in point, Cleveland, where they really did mix. And granted, they had maybe one of the best, if not the best, rotation prior to all the injuries during the year, and they were a runaway winner of their division. But they really did it with piecemeal. Guys like Rajai Davis, they went out and addressed need, and you would say they're creative. I would say cheap, but you would say creative. So when it comes to getting creative, if a guy like David Robertson isn't the offing, what is it or who is it you would look at that might be available that the Toronto Blue Jays could kick tires on, or maybe sign in free agency, or maybe make a trade for? What do you think is most likely for the Blue Jays in addressing their bullpen as it sits today?
So I think that, to build off what you're saying on creativity there, I think that
you mean cheapness.
Right. And there are some areas of a team where I don't think you want to be too creative. I think that you can get too cute, and I would point to left-handed relief as one of them. I think that if you're a baseball team that's trying to win in the present day, you want to have a good left-handed reliever. And at this point, the Blue Jays lack in that area. So I think that if they have a chance to go out there and get someone like a Jerry Blevins, who's established and who can give you a good left-on-left look, I think that's worth spending on. And to be honest, that's not really a creative idea. That's more of a paint-by-numbers idea, and it's not going to get you all kinds of points with the most creative moves of the offseason. It's just one of those moves that has the potential to work. When I talk about being creative, I think it's more on the right-handed side of things, where you're going to need probably 5 to 6 right-handed relievers in your bullpen. Right now they have 3 who you really trust. That's Osuna, Grilli, and Biagini. Beyond that, you have a lot of holes. And I wonder if on that part of the bullpen, is it worth looking at guys who, let's say, were starters a couple of years ago? Now they're looking at a career change. Maybe they're going to have success in the bullpen the way Gavin Floyd did last year, the way guys like Joe Blanton have it in recent seasons. Those are the kind of guys that you can probably get really affordably, and maybe that's a way to end up getting some surprise performances.
So give me some names. Give me a couple, float a couple that you think would fit that perspective for the Toronto Blue Jays.
So a couple of them would be, I think Matt Latos is one guy that you look at as a possibility in that mold. And I think he'd be available on a very, very small commitment. So I'm not saying that you build your bullpen around him, but he could be worth a look because he's still young, throws pretty hard. That's the kind of guy that can rebound in a new role. Similarly, you could look at a guy like Travis Wood with the Cubs last year, and he pitched in relief and was very good in that role. I think that he's someone who brings that versatility. He's probably going to cost more of a commitment, but, he's someone who has the potential to succeed in either role, starting or relief. And I think that's a little bit outside the box compared to someone like a Blevins.